Hi, and welcome to Your Inside Power. We help you to discover the tools and the items that you have inside of you to create the life of your dreams. My topic today is about the universal laws. And if you watched the last episode, is where we really started talking about these laws and why they are so important and why they impact your life. And what you need to realize is that these laws are operating in your life, whether you're aware of them or not. And so you are either benefiting from those laws or you are having them act as detrimental to your life. So I want you to benefit from laws because here's the one thing we know: we cannot change them. They operate just like, day goes to night, tide goes out, tide comes in, the seasons change. We can't change those laws. And you have to learn to operate with them. But if we're not aware of the various laws that there are in the universe, we can't help ourselves. So, one thing I have to kind of impact is there has to be a belief that there's a higher power. If you look at the world and you look at everything on earth and you don't believe there's a higher power, I tend to think maybe you haven't thought about it. How could this have happened just on its own, without any thought behind it? And when we don't really believe in that higher power, I don't care what you call it, whether you call it God or not, that's what I choose to call it. But you may call it infinite intelligence, source energy, higher power, Buddha. It doesn't matter to me what that is, but there has to be some type of belief there's something bigger than we are as a human being. And so that's what we're talking about, that higher power, whatever you call that. And when we can live closer to that power or that source energy, it's helpful to us. And that's how we start to become aware of what's going on around us, and we start to understand the truth. Have you ever wondered, what is the truth? Sometimes that's a difficult concept to think about, but we have to start to realize that there is something bigger than us, and we're just like a little speck along the way. And we have to start to see the truth. And that knowledge and that awareness will allow us to change our point of view. I was just talking to somebody the other day, and we were talking about leadership. And it was on a podcast. And I said, part of leadership is being able to become aware of other people's point of views and not just thinking that we have the only way. And so often you see this, people think this is the only way to do something, or my thinking is the only thinking that's correct. And it's just not true. Your thinking is correct because of the experiences and the things that you know about you and your awareness of the world. But somebody else might have a completely different thought because of their experiences, their background, and their thought patterns too. So when you start to develop awareness and start to look for truth and get very close to source energy, you start to develop wisdom. And with that wisdom, hopefully, is part of looking at other points of view and seeing, what can I do? Or if I thought this way, what would I be thinking now? What would my point of view be in this situation? Well, maybe if I thought like this person, what would my thinking be? And what would my point of view be? And when you can get to that particular area in your life where you can look at situations and see those different points of view, you have gained a lot of awareness into the world. So here's a quote: "The wise man changes his mind, the fool never." It's always bothered me when I hear people talk about, generally it's a politician that has changed their mind and changed their thinking or changed what they feel about a situation, and they call them a flip-flopper. Well, sometimes it might be that, but hopefully at many times, and more of the times, it's because they have developed awareness and they have learned more and they have realized that that way of thinking previously was maybe very narrow and very limited. And I think for a person to think at the age of 60 the same way they thought at the age of 20 is a sad thing and a very foolish thing, because the world's changing. The world's changing all the time. So if the world's changing, don't we have to change with it? Don't we have to change our thinking? Isn't that what evolution is all about? Evolving to a different thought. And so we have to start looking at our ideas and in which things are not serving us well anymore, and which things can we change our perspective on. Now, that doesn't mean that we change maybe every fundamental or every idea you've had about yourself, but sometimes we have to evolve and start thinking differently. So remember that a wise man changes his mind, the fool never. You see, energy is constantly moving to and through us. And as that energy is moving through us, it's changing our thought patterns. I have this quote from, you've probably heard this before, from Henley. It says, "I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." We have the power to control our thinking. That is a power that has been gifted to us. And as far as we know, we're the only animals on the planet that really do control our thinking. We don't live by nature and by our senses, although some people do. Some people absolutely just live through their senses, and that's a very animalistic behavior. But we have been given this gift, and we've been given lots of different gifts inside of us to be able to change our thinking. That's what your inside power is all about. How can we use these gifts we have been given to absolutely change our thinking and change our awareness? So unfortunately, we do have many people that do not use that power. And why don't they use it? Well, for some, it's because they're not aware. They're not aware that they have the powers. Raymond Hollowell says, "Your thoughts make you, and your ideas, principles, or ruling desires will determine your destiny." Isn't that beautiful? Your thoughts make you. What are you thinking? What are your predominant thoughts? Are they thoughts of where you want to go, what you want to do, what you want your life to look like? Or are they negative thoughts that aren't going to help you at all and just going to keep pulling you down? It's a choice, because we have been given that choice and that opportunity to decide. But your ideas, your principles, your ruling desires will determine your destiny. You got to use those powers. Use the powers that you have inside of you. Our problems are all from up here. We think it's from something that happens in our lives, but our problems start with our thought patterns. They don't exist just in the outside world. They all start with our thinking, which is why you have to be able to control your thinking. Why do we do some of the things that we do? Have you ever thought about that? What causes us to behave the way that we do? Sometimes we just need clarity, and sometimes we just need to step back and say, what caused that? Where's that thinking? Where's that thought process coming from? And when we can do that, it makes such a huge difference in our lives, because now we're not just going through the motions. We are actually thinking and deciding what it is that we need to do in our lives. So we have to keep that in mind. Everybody can do better than they're doing today. Everybody can. And it doesn't have to be just in monetary means. You can do better at being a better person. You can build better relationships. You can have better health. There's something that every person can do better than what they're currently doing. It's a matter of making a decision and taking a step forward, and then taking another step forward. It doesn't have to be a huge leap, but when you take a step every single day, moving towards the life that you want, and the thinking that you want that will serve you well. By the end of the week, look how far you've gone. By the end of the month, look how far you've gone. By the end of the quarter, by the end of the year, you need a telescope to look back and see how far you've come. And sometimes we don't see that in ourselves because we're with us all the time. And when you're with yourself all the time, you don't see that those little tiny steps add up every day and they make a massive change in your life. And so we have to just be aware and be willing and make a decision to do something different. We have to start to think, do we have a good reason for our thinking? Where did the thinking come from? You see, a lot of those thought patterns are buried in our habits, and they're buried in thought patterns that were maybe generations back in our life. And we still have those predominant thoughts. Why? Because we grew up with them. We don't know any different. When I did trainings, corporate trainings, I try to relate this to people. A child who grows up in a household where people are yelling all the time and putting them down and being very negative knows no different. They don't know there can be a difference. Just the same as a child that's brought up in a very loving and caring family doesn't know any difference. That's all they know. And I remember reading a story one time in a book about this guy who came from a very political family. I think his father was an attorney, probably involved in some politics. And so at the dinner table, they would talk politics all the time. And that would be a constant topic. And one time when he got old enough, that friends invited him over to their house, and he, was spending time in another family's dinner, and that was not a topic at all. And he thought it was a really strange thing. And that's the first time he was aware that not everybody's like him. And not everybody just talks politics. But you see, if that's all somebody knows, that's all they think there is. And so we grow up in these like little bubbles of what we've been brought up to think. And sometimes that thinking is really good for us, and other times it is not. And we have to become, because we've been gifted with this idea of thought and being able to think and control our thoughts, when we get to be an adult, we need to decide and control our thoughts, and we get to choose and decide if that's going to be what we want or not. So we really have to start thinking about what it is that we want and discipline our mind. The only way to discipline your mind is to study this information. And that's why so few people are really super successful in life, because so few people take the time to study this. They just go through life wandering on a path that maybe they don't even want to be on. But you don't have to do that. You have a choice. And you can make your life to be whatever it is that you want. It's your choice. So we have this age-old question. Does man have the ability to control life, build his own reality? Can we change a negative situation in life, health, wealth, and relationships? That's can we really make a difference? Well, I believe that we can, because I've seen it in my own life. I've seen it in the lives of my children. We do have that choice. And sometimes we can feel a lot of despair or discouragement because things don't go the way we want them to go. I know I was talking to one of my clients the other day, and we were talking about this, and how it hadn't been a good week for her. And it was discouraging. And we all get discouraged. We can't always be up here like everything's wonderful and lovely. Things happen. Things happen in our lives. But we still have a choice of how we react or respond. And some people react, and other people will respond to a situation and realize that they are in control. ultimately, we are responsible for who we become. And if you don't like who you are, look in the mirror and realize you can change it. Nobody has made you into the person that you are. Now, some people may say, well, you don't know what happened in my life. I understand that. My life, things happened in my life too. But it became a choice. And we decide what's going to happen. And so we have to look at it like, what choice do we want? And what do we really want in our reality? Now, things that go wrong. Viktor Frankl was in a concentration camp during the Second World War, but he chose to control his thoughts. And he decided that he could control his mind. He couldn't control what was happening around him. He couldn't control the situation he found himself in that concentration camp. But he knew he could control his thinking. And that may have been the only thing he could really control. But he took that and he survived it. Your inside power, and with that, we think of belief. And we have to be able to believe that there's more out there and there's a greater good. Now, I was talking to somebody the other day and they were like, I feel like I haven't really lived. I feel like, what have I done with my life? And there's times I think that too. I look at what somebody else has accomplished and I think, oh, I haven't done anything. And that's not true. That's not true. Because my early focus for, well, about 30 years was raising my 3 children, because they were 9 years in between the oldest and the youngest. But my biggest thought pattern at that time was taking care of my kids, making sure that I raised really fine adults. And I accomplished that. That's a huge accomplishment just in itself. You're raising the next generation. Did I do everything I would have loved to have done at that time? No, because that wasn't my focus. My focus was being the best mom I could possibly be, to raise the best kids and give them a foundation where they could thrive. And I feel like I accomplished that. And that's a huge accomplishment. So sometimes we look at our own lives and we think, what have I done? And you just don't realize how many people you've touched, maybe in a small way that you're not even aware of, and made a huge difference. So don't ever sell yourself short and think that you haven't done anything. Start to look at all the good that you have done. And people are here for different purposes. We're not all the same. And that's good. Because if we were all the same and everybody was, that personality that was just striving and, at the top, who would help them get there? We're all here for a different purpose. We just have to figure out what our purpose is. So we create the ideas, and then we have to put the action behind it. And then if something goes well, figure out what you did well and give yourself a pat on the back. If something goes wrong, look at it, reflect, and figure out how to fix it. But your actions always create a reaction. That's one of the laws of the universe. Action, reaction. We learned that in science class back in probably elementary school. For every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. That happens for everything. So when you take an action, there's going to be a reaction. It's either going to be positive or negative. And then you just reflect on that and figure that out. But your body controls your actions. Your thinking controls your body. So you have to first think the idea. You have to dwell on it. You have to desire it. You have to want it. And then your body will go into action and help you to get there. So we have to learn how to use our minds constructively to help others and to amplify everything that we're doing. And that's the key. Scientists will tell us that the key to living a successful life is doing just that. And, when we look at the laws of the universe, they are so precise that a scientist can figure out what it will take, how long it will take to get to the moon, and they can time it in the precision of a second. A second. Now that seems unbelievable to me because I think that's a really long distance. How do you figure that out? But even our GPS, think about that. That GPS that you have can pretty much time exactly what's going to happen down to, let's say, a minute or two. And I think, how does it do it? How does it know how fast the traffic's moving, what kind of the lights are going to turn, what kind of snarls might you get into or construction? How does it know? It does, and it can time it. And sometimes I'm just amazed at, tell somebody my, ETA is certain time, and you actually get there at that time. It's just amazing. Another thing Raymond Hollywood says is there is a marvelous inner world that exists within man. That's our inner power. Marvelous inner world is our inner power. And the revelation of such a world enables man to do, to attain, and to achieve anything he desires within the bounds or limits of nature. Within the bounds or limits of nature. Your inner power. You can do anything you want within the bounds of nature. And isn't that a wonderful thing to know? But how many people tap into that? We have to learn to tap into our inner power so that we can change our own world. What we do is we tend to allow situations to control us. We tend to allow the world, what's happening in the world, to control us. Can't control much of what goes on, but we can control our thinking, and we control how we respond or react to a situation. But that's what we tend to do. We tend to allow the world to control us. There is perfection within us. We were all born with perfection. But as we grew, our perfection got virus coded. And so we have to go back and we have to dig deep and uncover all those viruses to become the person we need to be. Our action will control results. Our actions come from our desires. So until we have a desire, we're not going to do the action. Our thoughts create those desires, and those thoughts determine the condition and the mental vision that you have. So you have to start out with a thought and make it to a desire before you're ever going to get to that action. So create the thought in the mind before the reality will show up in your life. Now, we tend to live in this very instantaneous world. You can pick up the phone, call somebody halfway around the world, and it's very instantaneous. And so sometimes when things don't happen right away, we become discouraged. But there is a time between when you think of it in your head till it's going to be created in your reality. And we don't necessarily know how long that's going to take. It could take a day, could take a week, could take a month, could take 10 years. We don't know. And I use that with my son. He thought of the idea of getting a full college scholarship when he was in 6th grade. Now, obviously, that was going to take some time. But he kept thinking about it until it became a desire, a burning desire, and he had to have it. And every time he thought he was, discouraged or something didn't go right, he had to rethink it and remap and figure it out. And 6 years later, he was offered that full college scholarship. So it took him 6 years. Now, sometimes it's a little more obvious because, if you're in 6th grade, you have to go to your 12th grade, it's going to be 6 years. Sometimes it's not. We just don't know. For Napoleon Hill, it took him about 20 years. He had to study all these highly successful people and figure out a philosophy pulling from this person and that person and this person, till he fit it all together and figured out what commonalities they had that made them successful, and then see if he could teach other people to do it. Because if he had a philosophy that worked and it worked for other people, then anybody could do it. Same way with Wallace D. Wallace. That's exactly what he did. He realized that if he could change his thinking, it could change his world. And if he could do it, then anybody could do it. And once you have that idea going through your mind, you'll realize that you do have the capacity to change the world. You are in control of who you are and who you become. Every idea that is produced, either good or bad, starts with a thought. All starts with a thought. Whatever you build in your mind, you can see in your world. And you, when you keep that in your head and you keep thinking about it and keep developing it, you will attract everything you need to you in your life. And everything that you have in your life today, you have attracted to you. The people, the items that you have, the health that you have, you've attracted all that into your life. So picture lack, picture poor health, picture poor relationships, picture, an empty bank account. That's what you'll get. When you start to picture abundance, start to picture good health, start to picture good relationships, that's what you'll get too. It's a matter of shifting your thinking. And if you don't believe that, please, 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 please reach out and let's have a chat. And let me give you some examples of things that have happened in other people's lives. And let me help you to change one thing, because if you believe that you can change one thing and build a different reality, then you'll understand that you can change many things and develop a different reality. So it's a matter of having that knowledge. As it says in Proverbs, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. As you think, so are you. We are governed by these laws of the universe. It is up to us to understand, which is why we're going to get through a whole pattern of these laws in the next probably 20, 30 weeks. And the realization of this law and action determines your manifestation of those things. So please reach out. I have some information there. Go to my website, creatingtopproducers.com, and you can get a blueprint that will help you really get some questions into your mind as to how you can go about changing your life. And what I want you to do is to utilize those inside powers. You've got those inside powers, and change your life and change your reality.